right. There we are. Now we're live. Ah, thank you, StreamYard. StreamYard actually has updated. They're just now coming out of the beta testing for StreamYard. This is still technically the beta of the app, but I'm really loving what it can do. Hopefully the alpha is going to have some real some capabilities as far as like video and stuff is concerned. But this is excuse me, I'm still kind of getting used to some of this new stuff. I've seen new things in my sidebar here all of a sudden. So anyways, guys, welcome to Religion in the Red Pill, the triumphant return of Religion in the Red Pill. I haven't done Religion in the Red Pill since I did let's see, I did one with Sam Bada about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I have been remiss. I really wish I could keep up with this show a little bit more regularly. I plan on it into 2020 because I am working, as everybody knows, on a 4th book. And I plan to publish that in the first quarter of 2020. And I wanted to get this show sort of as a foundation so that we can have these conversations. And I have with me today Abuamerican. He also goes by the name Craig. So if I refer to him as Craig, you guys will understand. But that he is a Muslim. He is a red pill guy. He has gosh, how long have I known you? I've been following you on Twitter for a while now. And I've been meaning to get to cover Islam on this show. And I had back in May, I had what was it, Rabbi Kaba, a red pill Orthodox Jew and a rabbi. And so I was joking with Craig before. I said, this is kind of turning into a barroom joke. It's like where I get like a Hindu, a Jew, and a Muslim come into a bar when they talk about girls, right? That's where we're aiming this right now. So anyways, Craig, Abuamerican, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you have a blog, and how long have you been part of, I guess, if you consider yourself part of the manosphere, how long have you been a part of the manosphere now?
Ooh, well, I've been part of the manosphere for probably about 2.5 years now, actually. Mm-hmm. But I've been following the manosphere for almost 4 years straight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Stumbled across it with like the standard story of most men, wondering what happened. I was living with multiple women in Qatar. I was teaching there. That's my primary trade and profession. I was living with 3 women under one roof. It fell apart. I was doing everything that, blue pill ideology tells you should do, despite having like a lot of alpha attributes in order to actually get 3 women to live together under one roof. And when it fell apart, I just was like, what did I do wrong? I did everything that everybody said you're supposed to do. I came across the manosphere.
Wow. So, and you and I were talking about this before, and this is the best place to start because it'll give everybody a little bit of history about you. You used to be a Catholic and you converted to Islam. Now, when you converted from Catholicism to Islam, was your understanding about like marriage and I guess polygamy really was that something you had to adjust to? Because Catholicism is really one man, one woman, whereas Islam, you at least have the option, let's say, to have multiple wives. And apparently you said you told me before, so you have 2 wives now and you're working on number 3, or you're going to get married to number 3. So polygamy is something that's normal for you, but I presume that it wasn't normal for you when you're Catholic.
Actually, I can't say I was a very practicing Catholic. My mom was quite religious, but I wasn't really practicing. I don't think, she really spent a lot. I don't think she actually didn't spend a lot of time teaching me or, pushing Catholicism upon me. So I always had multiple women, even prior to Islam. I had multiple girlfriends and was always doing my own thing. But I was, of course, less open about it. Then when I became Muslim, it was part of the religion. That's not why I became a Muslim, but it was built into the religion. So it helped it feel even more natural to me when I became Muslim.
That's good. Yeah. So how old are you now? I don't think I asked you that.
I'm 47.
So you're 47 now. Okay.
47. Yeah.
Very young, 47. Okay. And so when you were like, how did you convert to Islam? You're probably brought up Catholic, maybe not practicing Catholic. Like, what was it that made you decide, hey, this sounds like the conviction or the religion for me?
It was the first Gulf War, actually. I
Mhm.
had a buddy. I went to high school with him, and he ended up in a forward unit out in Saudi Arabia.
Mhm.
When he came back from Saudi, we of course met up, and he told me I'm Muslim. Now this is a white guy,
Mhm.
and so I was completely ignorant of Islam at the time, and I was like, dude, you can't be Muslim. It's impossible. You're a white guy.
Mhm.
Muslims are only Arabs and brown people. He's like,
Mhm.
no, dude. And so right there, I knew I had a faulty understanding of the religion right off the bat, and I started listening to what he had to say, and it just made perfect sense.
Mhm.
There's several sciences to Islam, and it appealed to my rationale as a man, and it
Mhm.
also appealed to my spiritual side. So
Mhm.
yeah, it just
That's
3 years it
interesting.
took me to become Muslim, but yeah, that was the
Mhm.
start of the story.
And then so you came back to the United States and you converted to Islam in the States, or was it
No,
just
in
that the
Germany actually.
in Germany? Okay. And so
Yeah,
you had one wife in Germany that you are now divorced from, and that's why you're there?
indeed.
Okay. Now
Yeah,
was that prior to your conversion to Islam?
she was with me prior to my conversion to Islam. When I met her in a club actually.
Yeah.
Probably not the best place,
Uh-huh.
but I met her in a club. We had twins together, my first two boys, and then
Mhm.
I became Muslim, and she really hated that. She really hated Islam, but later on she converted also,
Mhm.
and
Really?
yeah, then we went to Qatar, and that's when I actually picked up the multiple wife thing. But prior
Mhm.
to this, I had actually been cheating on her several times with several different women.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So you was it that you like you couldn't be like faithful to one woman, or was it just like a variety thing, or was it that like because I would say that like if you can be Muslim and you can have multiple wives, that definitely fits in, I think, with really what I call the male imperative, unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And I would say that polygamy in some way at least like locks in with that man, the masculine side of like you said yourself that Islam appealed to your masculine nature. Like, was it
you
was
know,
it
um,
easier for you to like convert as a result of that?
um,
I mean,
no,
obviously there's
actually,
something more than just that, but I'm just saying that,
yeah.
that
I
was
mean, that
probably
helped.
something. Yeah.
I always found a polygynous nature in terms of women. There's no other way in terms of women. Natural. It just always
Mhm.
felt natural. It's not. I only hit it prior to Islam because of the social pressures to be a monogamous, faithful, good man, and
Mhm.
so I played that guy, for my wife,
Mhm.
my now ex-wife, but it never felt natural to me, and so when I became Muslim, yeah, it of course appealed to it, but I was still playing that role for quite some time
Mhm.
until I moved to Qatar, and it became very easy because the society, the social structure, the laws all supported it, and then
Mhm.
it was a perfect storm to just go ahead and take action on it.
Mhm.
But
I have
even prior to Islam, polygyny
uh
felt natural to me.
really? Okay. I have a
Yeah,
just really quickly, I will run through these real fast here. And by the way, guys, the chat's open. You don't necessarily have to do a super chat. I'll put them out here. So Pierre says, what Islamic interpretation subsect of Islam do you adhere to? For example, like Sunni, Shia, Sufi, Salafi. Is that what it was?
yeah, Salafi. Yeah, I am
Mhm.
a Sunni Salafi.
Mhm.
I'm pretty open about that. We don't catch a lot of love, the Salafi Muslims,
Mhm.
but I am a Salafi Sunni Muslim. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. And then I got this other one here, and this is actually be a good jump off point for something else. It says, do you acknowledge any conflict between subsets of red pill men based on their ethnicity, race, religion? Is the large migration of Muslim countries to the West a problem as you see it?
Holy smokes, dude.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there is, I guess, what you can call the black manosphere, and I used to be
Mhm. Oh, yeah. I'm
partially
very familiar
together
with
with
it.
those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. A guy named Guy King. I don't think he broadcasts anymore. He pulled down his channel. He actually pulled me into it, and I was more fringe because the whole racial thing isn't really. It's not how I grew up. My
Mhm.
grandfather's actually as white as you are.
Mhm.
So yeah, I come from a very ethnically diverse family. My mother's Indian.
Mhm.
People think my mother's black. She's not. She's Indian.
Mhm.
So it never really drew me in because they have very specific problems in the United States dealing with ethnicity and whatnot. But there is definitely a conflict. They do feel that there is a lot of racism in the red pill scene. And you have the same feeling amongst a lot of Muslim men who the red pill ideology appeals to. They feel like, Islam is constantly under attack. And it probably has something to do with the immigration, issues that are going on right now with, the Syrians and refugees and all this.
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely acknowledge it's there, but what are you going to do?
Right.
Stand at the
Yeah.
wall and like focus on the problem, or are
Well,
you going to look for solutions?
and I think a lot, and maybe I could answer a little bit of this. I think a lot of the conflict, if there is conflict, I think a lot of the let's just say hesitation in the black manosphere right now is because the red pill has been appropriated by elements that really never had anything to do with what the red pill originally was about, which is intersexual dynamics. So, and I said this last year at the my State of the Manosphere address, and I've said it actually probably 4 times before that, is that the red pill is a loose brand right now, and so you're going to get people of a particular ideological bent, of a religious bent, whatever, who want to say, well, if the red pill equals truth, then what I believe in is truth, and therefore it's red pill. And it's like, no, the red pill was always about understanding intersexual dynamics in, as far as I'm concerned, in as rational and reasonable a way as possible. A lot of people will hit me up right now. Like the first thing people were telling me when I started out writing this book is that, you're the rational male. You shouldn't believe in God, but I even had like agnostics would tell me that, like people who do believe in God will tell me like, you shouldn't believe in God. I'm like, well, like, first of all, I have a faith. I don't talk about it very much because I don't want it to interfere with, as much of my, my reasonable approach as I possibly can get. I try to stay as objective as I can when I'm talking about these things. And yes, I understand that true objectivism is really impossible. I get that, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't make the effort. So me talking about religion and me bringing up, like me having, a Jew or Orthodox rabbi or Muslim or whatever on here seems a little bit off kilter to a lot of guys because they think that the red pill should just be about, nuts and bolts evolution and forget everything else. And I kind of disagree with that. And I should say this is that I'm always going to fight against the idea that we should limit the red pill or we should limit the manosphere to just one race or one culture. Or because the first thing people will throw at me all the time is they'll say, well, Rollo, I live in a different country and this is what I see. Or that's only a problem with the West. And that's probably something I want to get into it with you right now. People will say, well, the problems between men and women that you describe in the red pill or the manosphere talks about are only really problems in Western culture. And in my country, that would never happen. Or in my Orthodox religion, that could never happen. And then what's interesting is I'll find like examples of feminism sort of creeping into those religions. Sort of, if it's not on the periphery, then it's already kind of an undercurrent in those religions right there. So that was my next question is: do you see, like, you live in Germany right now? You're soon to be living with 3 women. You've been married once before, and you have how many kids? 3.
Man, I have 8 kids with number 9 on the way.
8 kids. Okay. So by even by the most like conservative metrics, I mean, you're fulfilling your duty as a man. I mean, you've had, X amount of children, you've had X amount of wives. I would presume, and I don't know what it is that you do for a living. Maybe you could like tell us a little bit about that, but apparently you're making enough money where you can support those children and you can support, now soon 3 women, 3 wives. So do you see that do you think that it is more of a Western problem, or do you think that like feminism and all of the things that the red pill goes into, do you think it's more uniquely Western, or do you see it happening in other cultures? Because like I see it happening certainly in Western Europe, but then I'll see a place like Iran right now, and Iran is a Muslim country, and we see women being arrested for dancing in the streets or not wearing a hijab or singing or whatever it is that women want to do sort of as a form of protest. And so when I see something like that, I go, well, maybe it's not. Or I'll see that they just, and you've been to Qatar, I know that. So you've been to Saudi Arabia, and you probably know that they're allowing women to own businesses in Saudi Arabia now. and they are allowing women to drive now, and that's a big
Saudi
deal.
Arabia is going through a massive and rapid change right now. I mean, I have several friends living in Saudi Arabia, but before I get into all of those details, let me start off with saying that as Muslims, we believe that Islam is perfect, but the Muslims aren't. So it provides us with a perfect way of living, and we try to, attain it, but we're not perfect. There is creeping feminism into the ranks of the Muslims by far, both the men and the women. We have a serious problem with white knights and guys who will try and bend and twist the religion to fit feminine imperatives in order to look good for the ladies. And then of course you got women who are just they're gonna take on and inculcate parts of feminism into their life without even realizing they're doing it. I was married in London to a Yemeni girl, and a friend of mine, because we use references when you get married. I know it seems like I'm going off topic here, but stay with me. And he told her male guardian, because we use male guardians to marry, he told her, said she can't have any form of feminism with her, or he's going to really the relationship's not going to go well, which it didn't. Turns, they were very offended that he would even say something like that. But when I moved over to the UK and I started living with the girl. She was very feminist. I mean, she had, exceptionally strong feminist ideas. But when I told her these are feminist ideas and I strongly opposed them, she looked at me like I was speaking Chinese. So we do have creeping feminism in several areas. Marriage is, of course, the number one place where women are going to try and exercise their authority and power as best as they can. And if a guy gives up something, then of course, it's gone. And so what we have is a situation where we actually have non-Muslim women coming into Islam, and they're bringing their ideas with them also. And so I'll just give you an example before we go on to the other stuff. An example of this would be like single mothers. Now, we know in the manosphere, single mothers are like, oh my gosh.
Avoid single mothers, right?
Yeah. And in Islam, there's no real problem with marrying a single mother, but there's no real reward either. But what these women have tried to do is they've tried to hijack the reward that because a man is rewarded Islamically for marrying a woman for taking care of orphans, excuse me. And so what they've tried to do is they've tried to equate their situation with their single motherhood with the reward of raising orphans, and the two are completely separated. And so when you ask them, okay, well, where are the specific texts Islamically that show that there's a special reward for marrying a single mother, they can't produce it. And so we have this entire attempt to hijack Islam for feminist purposes, for female imperative purposes, but it doesn't work because, like I said at the beginning, Islam has a very strong science to it. And there's a science of the texts, and you can't just say, well, Islam says this, and then the people have a famous question, where's your proof? And that means you have to bring a Quranic text or a text from the different books of Hadith. It's a I don't know how to explain Hadith. I don't know if you're familiar with Islam or anything.
Hadith I'm not really sure.
It's like the actions, speeches,
consider I know nothing.
Prohibitions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So those are like the bylaws, like these are the things, like things that you should do as a good
exactly
Muslim, right?
And they're quite detailed. And so you have a situation where it's very easy for us to rebuff feminist attempts to take over Islam. You have an actual science to be like, look, you're just talking out the side of your head, get lost. So yeah. So as for me working in, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go finish your thought there.
Yeah, as for me working in Germany, I do quite well. I'm a purchasing agent at a very large corporation. I've only worked at large corporations in Germany. I don't want to mention my company here, of course. I don't want to dox myself, but I do work at an exceptionally large global corporation. And I'm a purchasing agent there. They pay me half decent. I can't complain. I do well
enough to support 8 children and 3 soon to be 3 wives. That's great. Yeah,
indeed.
That's great.
Yeah.
I got one question here, and a question is a comment here. I'm just going to throw this out. It's just tell the verse in the Quran that says women have to cover their heads. You can't, because there is no verse saying that. Is that true?
No, that's not true. I'm not a specialist in the text of Islam, but there is one ayat about covering themselves. I'd have to look it up. But I don't want
I thought and for those who are wondering, yes, I do have a Quran in my library over here. Yeah, I was gonna say
I'll tweet it after this and I'll tag you.
That's a good that's something else I wanted to ask you about. you were just saying a moment ago that you said that there are guys in Islam who you would consider blue pill, who are much more. Now,
Yeah.
does that mean they're more passive about it? Does that mean like why would you call them blue pill? Like, what is it that they do, or what is it that they believe? Like, I understand that there's the religious ideas and there's like conviction, because I can I can talk all day long about how I see, Christian guys are very, very blue pill, but that doesn't like preclude that there are guys who are red pill and very much, believe in their faith. But like, so what would a blue pill Muslim guy look like to you?
A blue pill Muslim guy is a guy who actually rejects the concept and the idea that Islam is a patriarchal religion. There is without question, without doubt, that Islam is a patriarchal religion. It is explicitly clear in several hadith and in the Quran that men are authority. They are authorities over women, that they are superior to women. And there is no qualification to this. Allah gives men superiority over women, period. And so you'll find guys that'll start trying to make rationalizations. No, it's not meant like that. You'll find guys that'll actually try and argue that polygyny is not a part of Islam, or it's not something that's practiced in this time. This is expected from women, but from men, it's a very odd, position for them to take. And you'll find guys that'll be arguing about the rights that are given to a man over a woman Islamically, quite frequently. This is it's a very common occurrence, unfortunately.
So if, like, say for example, like, let me just ask you this. So if you're like, your wives are not allowed to leave the house without you, are they not allowed to, like, I forget some of these other bylaws real quickly here. But like, to wear a hijab, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing
hijab. Yeah, no,
hijab.
Absolutely. In terms of leaving the house, there's several different opinions. Some say it's for traveling. A woman is not. There's definitely, without question, a woman is not allowed to travel without her husband. So there's no going to Cancun, with the girls.
Yeah, no trips to Vegas.
Yeah, you can't. It's just not going to happen. Islamically, that's not permissible. She can't do that without her husband's permission. And any guy who's going to do that and say like, yeah, okay, Islamically, then he's got a lot of problems, because that's problematic Islamically. In terms of going shopping or whatnot, there's a difference of opinion as to whether or not she needs her husband's permission. My wife generally has an open permission to go to the store. It's not far from here, but she still asks me. I'll be at work and she'll send me a text, baby, do you mind if I go to the store? And I'll be like, yeah, go ahead. So, But hijab is an absolute. A woman should be wearing hijab at all times. This has nothing to do with her husband. Whether she's married or not, she should have that on. So this is just.
And is that part of the sect? Is that part of being Salafi or Sunni? Is there like, there's differences in opinion in that depending on the sect, or is that like all across?
Maybe the Sufis might contend with this, but there's never been like an area of contention amongst the different groups and sects in Islam that I know about. They almost all universally hold that women should wear a head covering. It might be the Sufis. The Sufis, they go kind of goofy sometimes. So those guys, they say all sorts of stuff.
So if there are guys who are adopting a more beta understanding, like I have always stressed this, and I'm glad you're kind of here to sort of back me up on this. I've always stressed that there's guys, like, when they're blue pill conditioned, it's one thing if you can mix that in with religion. I think a lot of mainstream Christianity right now mixes in like secular blue pill feminism into the religion itself, and then therefore what happens is it gets into the church culture, and then from the church culture it goes into the doctrine, like, this is how we do it at our church, kind of thing, and without really realizing that. And then, like, within maybe two or three generations, it ends up changing the faith, right? It's like it comes in and it says, well, this is how we've always done it, let's find some way to justify it within the Bible or the Torah or whatever, and let's convert, or let's change up the faith so that within two generations that faith is taught. And so therefore the things that were brought into it through secular culture then becoming sort of kosher as far as the religion is concerned, and then turning into doctrine, and then turning into Did I drop? Oh, there I go. Now I'm better.
There we go.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry. Next time I won't go wireless here. so as far as that, as the faith is concerned, I find that a lot of guys will find ways to justify their sort of their blue pill conditioning with their convictions, with their religious convictions. And those are some of the hardest guys to really unplug or to sort of get through to. So you're saying that there are guys who are already doing that in the Muslim faith. Now, are these guys, are they in some way trying to justify not having multiple wives? Are they in some way trying to find a way to say it's not necessarily a patriarchal religion? And if so, is that coming in like from a secular perspective that's coming into the religion itself?
Actually, no, they're trying to use religious text to do it. But again, like I said, because we have the sciences of Islam, of hadith, of interpretation of the Quran, it's very easy to rebuff this stuff. It doesn't stop them from trying, though. What's beautiful about it is that you find there's a very large sector of women who actually resist this, even though it goes against their imperative as women. And so you find that these women are actually, have more of a backbone and a spine than some of these guys do. But yeah, absolutely. We have guys that they're trying to use religious texts to justify their inability to go out and actually be the man that they should be and be the man that they want to be. Because masculinity is something that is basically a part of Islam. I mean, a guy is supposed to go out, he's supposed to be the protector and maintainer and provider in the household, everything that a woman is looking for. But at the same time, he's supposed to be a warrior. We have aspects of jihad, holy war, as it likes to be, as people like to translate it and whatnot. So a guy is supposed to be an all-around masculine man in general as a Muslim. He's supposed to be educated in terms of religious texts, knowledge, reading and writing and everything. He should be a very well-round, balanced guy. But you find that there are, of course, guys out there that are just gonna flop, and then they're gonna try to find a way to
justify
it, religiously, especially. Sorry, that verse is in Surah An-Nur about covering. I got a text from somebody who said Surah An-Nur.
On demand. That's great. That's great. Yeah. So I want you have a blog, and it's Abuamerican.com. Is that what it is?
Yes.
I just want to throw that out there real quick. One of the things I wanted to get into here, and I sort of see parallels. I know you're familiar with Andrew Tate. I know you have talked. Now, when I had almost about a month ago, I had a talk with him, and Andrew Tate has multiple women. He's not not Muslim, but he is definitely polygamous, let's just say. But he's also and I mean that in the truest sense of the word, like polygamist, meaning that he is one guy with many women, and he sees it as the most natural thing in the world. And I think I'm wondering that so there is that. I have to throw this book out there again because I really think that everybody should read this. It's a really great book called Alpha God, and it's by Dr. Hector Garcia. And it gets into the evolutionary psychology about patriarchy, about why the Abrahamic God is really an archetype for an alpha male, really he says an alpha male primate, but really an alpha male human being, and has the same concerns, the same priorities, the same imperatives as an alpha male human being would have. So what works best for God is really what works best for an alpha male patriarchal, primary guy in the world.
When we really look at it, I mean, polygyny is reflected in almost all male species across the globe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look from insects to whatever else.
Yeah, and that's another great. I'm glad you brought that. Actually, I do have this book right here. It's called Promiscuity, a great book by Tim Burkhead. Also goes into across the animal kingdom. Monogamy is actually the outlier for animals, and truly monogamous. Altruism is across the animal species, but like the monogamy itself, like true monogamy, is very much a rarity. And I think that. So now here's my other thing is, so I have come down on the polyamory sort of I don't know, sensation, the trend right now, where polyamory is supposed to be some sort of saving grace, I guess, for humanity, because if we can all just like end up like people think that bonobos are in the bushes, right, where we're all just going to have a free love society and everything works out for everybody else.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a separation. There needs to be a pointed distinction between polygamy and polyamory, because right now there are guys like I would say like Andrew Tate is a good example of a guy who is non-religiously practicing polygamy as an alpha male, as a guy who can do that. Now there's other guys who are going to say, well, I do it too, and I can have I have 2 wives, and I'm not Muslim, but I have 2 wives, or I have 2 girlfriends, and we have great 3-ways, and we have a fantastic sex life, and this is the way human beings ought to be. And I think that what that does is it eliminates the influence of like male paternity, because it seems to me that and maybe this is a good question for you. It's like, how important to Muslims from a Quranic perspective, how important is it for Muslims to know the paternity of their child? Like in Judaism, the birth line of the child is matrilinear, because only the female knows whose child it is, because she knows that it's hers. So if the woman is a Jew, then the child is already automatically a Jew. So like, is there anything in the Quran that like reinforces the importance of paternity?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. I mean, we have zero free mixing. Islamically, it happens because of the societies we live in, but Islamically, there's no free mixing between men and women in general. Even when I was in Qatar, I was a teacher. The schools are separated. The boys are in one school, the girls are in another school, and it stays that way, period, all the way up to university. There's absolutely no free mixing. It's also telling that, what is the punishment for adultery in Islam? So when a man and a woman, are married, and this is a universal punishment, that if one cheats, they are stoned to death. And I've seen some stonings. It's a bad way to go, So I mean, it's absolutely part of Islam to keep the 2 genders separated, because when men and women get together, we know what happens. Something's going to go down, and so that's a very important point. It's one of the Islamic rights of the husband. In an Islamic marriage, the husband has rights and the women have rights, and one of the rights of the husband is that he protects his honor, and part of his honor, this is probably where the concept of honor killings come from, although it's not an Islamic thing. But you find it happening in some Islamic countries, is the idea of honor killings, is that the woman's honor is to be protected at all times. She's to protect her own honor in his absence, meaning you don't do the whole pretty selfie things and all that. This is all something that's been mentioned in recent talks by recent scholars of Islam, or students of knowledge, as we call them, who are not actually considered scholars. This whole selfie culture, putting yourself out there, trying to look attractive for the opposite sex. This is a taking away. This is a degradation of your man, be it your father or your husband's honor as a woman. And this is not something that they should be doing. So, I mean, one thing automatically leads into the other. If a woman is practicing the religion properly, if the man is protecting his women folk in terms of like keeping her out of trouble, with social media and mixing with men, there's never going to be a question of paternity, whether or not that's, her husband's child. It shouldn't be. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. It did. So you have 2 wives right now. You're marrying a 3rd. Yeah. Did you have a hard time? Like a lot of guys most guys can't find 1 wife, not, let alone 3. I just got off I was just talking to Pat Campbell on his show, and I got a call from a listener who was 54 years old, and he just was recently divorced, and he's getting back into the sexual marketplace again. And he was just saying, I can't find a woman who doesn't have baggage. I can't find a woman who isn't like overly affectionate with her dog, or I can't, it's like they go on to, the first place they hit, of course, is like OkCupid or Match.com or whatever, thinking that that's going to be their saving grace. So do you think that is it like easier for a Muslim man to find another husband? I mean, clearly you have to have something going for you. You've got to be the kind of guy who can have those things. You got to be
Well,
the
I
guy
think,
who wants
yeah.
to do that in the first place.
Well, I think that's why I got a bad rep in the Islamic community. I'm kind of eccentric, and they really come at me sometimes because of some of the things I say. But at the same time, that's what makes me, popular with the ladies. And I'm trying to teach the guys this, probably be a little bit less eccentric than I am. But you guys are always asking me, where do you find all these women? Where do you get married from? Help me out, Abuamerican. I'm like, I can take you to the water, but you got to climb down the rocks to get down there and drink, man. You gotta man up. You got to be that. Let me say man up in the sense of, the red pill ideology of man up. Like, you have to be that attractive, assertive, competent, confident guy that they want. There's no difference between women that are Muslim and non-Muslim, Jewish or whatever else. Biologically, women want men that are assertive. They have a degree of aggression to them. This stuff. So this is basically why I have a platform, is because you have a lot of guys out there who are struggling to find women, and I don't know why, because I can literally throw a rock and hit 4 sisters that'll, marry me tomorrow. And so I find it an absolute mystery that guys you're struggling with this, because sisters, when I say sister, I'm speaking about Muslim women, they really want to get married. I'll give you an example from myself. I recently got married to a woman, 36 years old. It's a little bit higher in age than I'm usually, talking to. I'm talking to a sister right now that's 27, but she was a virgin when I married her.
At 36.
Yeah. At 36.
36. Wow.
And you find that this is not uncommon amongst Muslim women, and they're literally holding on by the skin of their teeth, because it's easy for even Muslim women to go out and do dirt like any other woman, and they're really holding on, waiting for some guy to just actually come up and be your man. And I find it an absolute mystery that you have so many Muslim men that are out there struggling to find wives. It's a mystery to me.
Do you think it's because of that social conditioning that they are looking? Because if you've read my stuff, you already know how big a fan of Sheryl Sandberg I am. But when I see, like, what you're saying, you're 47 years old, so she's still younger than you. Actually, that kind of brought up another question I had. A lot of MGTOWs will tell you, you're, especially if you have, like, one wife, let alone 3 wives, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself, like, is there, from a religious perspective, is there, do you think there's the same degree of risk for divorce that there would be in a Christian or Western marriage?
Islamically, no, because Islamically, the divorce is in the hands of the husband. A woman can ask for what's called a khula, like an absolve, to have the marriage absolved, but it doesn't mean it's going to be granted. But a Muslim man, he has the right to divorce the woman, but the woman doesn't have the right to divorce a man. And even in the event of a divorce, she doesn't get to clean house, and take all his money and half of his stuff. If she wants to leave the marriage, I think what you guys would call no-fault divorce, what we would call a khula, she leaves with what she came with. So her dowry, her clothing, whatever she came in with, she leaves with. And whatever he gave her stays with him. So there's no, I'm going to use marriage as a payday, as a financial means to move up in the world. And this is one of the reasons why I tell guys, do not marry using the legal system in the West. Marry Islamically. What any masjid will do it for you, as long as her male guardian is present. Most will. Let me not say any. And you should stick to that, because the legal system doesn't care about religion. They don't give a damn.
Right. Yeah, I was just made aware of a new legislation that's being passed in I think it's the Netherlands, in Holland. And it is, I guess, I don't know the particular details, but the premise of it is that that the religious side of the marriage is to be dissolved at the same time as the civil side. So I guess what they were having in the Netherlands was you could get a civil divorce, but yet from a religious perspective, you were still married to that guy. And I don't know what that entails, but I think it was because they were worried about, like, these child brides. like girls who were married into I would say is, I guess, Islamic faith, and were child brides, and then were turned, like they got older and they said, I want a divorce, I want out of this. Maybe it was abusive,
Yeah.
whatever. That's of course the way that it's sold. But apparently the legal side, I mean, there's the state side of marriage, and then there is the religious side. It's I got into this with Dr. Everett Piper about like a few months back, about the difference between a covenant marriage, which I would suggest is probably like a religious, from in a Muslim context, would be the religious side of things, as opposed to like signing the paper and putting doing a contract. Now,
Yeah.
when you get well, because you're married in Germany, so I'm not really sure how that works, but do you have a legal marriage with these women in Germany? And also, how does Germany, like, do they respect a polygamous marriage over there? Can you have more than one wife in Germany?
No, not legally. Not legally. You can't
Mm-hmm.
have more than one wife. No, I stick to religious marriages. Yeah, because the West is the West, and in general, they will railroad and shaft men as best as they
Mm-hmm.
can any way possible. So I stick to religious marriages.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody asks, I just say I'm in an open relationship, and everybody dropped it. They're like, "Oh, okay." So
an open relationship where
yeah,
I get to be open.
that's it.
Yeah, that's how it
It's
works.
my open relationship.
That's how it
Okay,
works.
it's not their open relationship.
Yes, I got it. That's great. Yeah, well, see, I think that there is. So when I was reading Alpha God, it sort of opened my eyes to the fact that regardless of because we're talking about Abrahamic faiths, we're looking at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We're looking at an Abrahamic version of a deity here. And it seems to me like in all of those religions, at least, well, Islam still is, but I would say at least, Christianity and Judaism used to be patriarchal religions. In fact, we used to call the Old Testament patriarchs, right? That was a whole thing. And so there was a time, in the Old Testament when it was no big deal for like Father Abraham to have two wives and could have concubines, and it was all good. And it wasn't, it wasn't like a free love situation. It was all based on that patriarchal understanding of a conventional masculinity, so that religion worked for men. I've also seen. Oh, go ahead.
You know what I find interesting is prior to becoming Muslim, I couldn't find any text religiously in terms of Christianity that prohibits polygyny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as I know, they don't exist. If somebody knows, I'd be happy to see it. But I have not seen any Christian text, any text from the Bible, that explicitly prohibits polygyny. I mean, it's as far as I know, it's something that's permissible in Christianity.
If you get into, like, if you dig into this book, one of the premises that it lays out. Now, of course, Hector Garcia is very feminized. Is I can tell that the reason he wrote the book was he wanted to draw attention to like how horrible men were to women on whole, because here we've developed this whole religion around us and in our best interests. And yeah, but I would also argue that right now we are starting to see a shift from those patriarchal religions to a religion that is based on feminine primacy. And that's one of actually the last chapter of my book, where I outline what does a female inspired religion look like, right? What does a religion that, like, you call it goddess worship or whatever, what does a female primary religion look like? We already know what a male one looks like, because it's based on men's biological imperatives, which is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And in the book, he also describes this as that powerful men, powerful patriarchs, whether that's the emperor or the king or the tribal chieftain or whatever, is always the guy who has the most access to the most women. And in terms of, like, say, like nobility, or when you get to a certain level, even tribal chieftains have this, is that they want to find ways to have as many women as they can, but they're their women. They're nobody else's women. So you get like the royal harem, or the concubines, and they're of course guarded by the eunuchs who have their junk cut off so that they know that they're never going to breed with these women, and the women stay in the forbidden city, right? Or they'll stay in some sort of compound that is walled off, and so the women are only there for his use, right? Even Roman emperors, tribal chiefs, it's always been the same across history. And so what happens is religions spring up around the idea of serving powerful men. So not only is it 100% applicable and okay for a powerful man, a worthy, powerful guy, by order of degree, because right now, if we can convince a population of men that if you've got enough affluence, if you've got enough wealth, if you've got enough, in fact, a sign of your status is to have more than one wife, or to have one primary and then to have concubines on the side. That was what I was going to ask you, is because I read and this is where I wanted to go with this. And yes, I see the super here. I'll get to it in just a second. In your blog, you have something that was saying, I forget, it was about monogamy is a lie. Is that what you said? Is that what was one of the blog posts?
Yes,
was?
yes.
Or polygamy. And you wrote something, and I found it really interesting, because I've written over the last year and a half, I've written at least 3 different posts.
I never read that.
Yeah, I did. Did my homework. So I read that, and so here's and maybe you can help me understand this a little bit, because like when I look at, there's an article that was a research article that was done by The Economist, and it was a research study of polygamous societies versus monogamous societies. And right around the time of agriculture, when we first started getting agriculture in, that's when you started to see the rise of a one-man, one-woman family, where it was that was the most access that you were allowed, was to have sex with one woman. And in fact, you weren't supposed to be a philanderer at all. It was almost like this denial of male nature. You're not allowed to have more than one woman. Of course, men and women are not really naturally monogamous, so we try to find ways around that. But for sake of satisfying the reproductive problem, solving the reproductive problem of the most amount of men, monogamy has been something that has been a stabilizing factor in Western culture right now. So the idea, and this is of course where we get ideas like the soulmate myth or one-itis, that there's only one person for you out there. And that's kind of part of like the common understood folklore of really a religion that's not a religion. Like really it's meant to serve women, in that the guy's not going to go out and breed with anyone else besides her. I think from a naturalistic perspective, I think that the old Abrahamic patriarchal religions got it right, because they understood the nature of men. But this article that I was reading on The Economist was correlating the amount of civil unrest in third world countries who had polygamy as their standard, as opposed to monogamy as their stated standard, I guess. And that polygamous societies tended to be more drawn towards war or towards conflict. Because if you've got a guy who has 4 wives, that means 3 other guys don't have a wife, and they don't get to solve their reproductive problem, whether that's by their own, but whether they're just 3 losers is up for debate, I'm sure. But you understand why, because like what happens is then you have these guys who have like this sexual frustration, and they've got to find ways to solve their reproductive problems. And so as a result, what do? They go and they kill the guy with 4 wives, and they say, we're going to take your wives, we're going to take all your property, we're going to take your cows, we're going to take whatever else. And so therefore that is what instigates, because it's the male testosterone, if it builds up enough and it's enough frustration, you're going to get violence. So so describe your article though, because you sort of you have a different take on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, just from a basic logical standpoint, I mean, we understand that, women are attracted to a certain type of man. So even if that guy that every woman wants to be with doesn't get 3 women, she's still not going to want to bang those guys that can't get a woman in the first place. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say
so
there's always going to be
yeah,
you have to include hypergamy in that equation. So
absolutely.
and that it's funny you should say that, because I heard a sister say the exact same thing, is that polygamy works best for the guys who are, who it works best for the guys that women want to get with, or that this is in theory, that the guys who are the alpha males, the guys who can defeat rivals, the guys who have the most resources, those guys. And this is a Pook quote, of course, is that women would rather share a successful alpha male than to be saddled with a
True.
faithful beta. And what is
He's absolutely
saddling
correct.
them? The idea of socially enforced monogamy.
Yeah. And then to top it off, my logic was that we've never truly, in any society, lived in a monogamous society, and especially in the 21st century, we definitely don't. I mean, with our access to pornography, prostitution, to the
Unlimited
different
access
ways,
to unlimited
yes,
sexuality.
that men have access, whether actual physically or just visually, he has access. I'm sorry, this thing's back here going off. I thought it was on silent. It's like, I apologize. It's blinging away back here. I thought I took care of everything. That these men of our time, especially, have unheard of, unprecedented amounts of access to women. I can go perfectly legal, as if I got legally, as a legally married man, I can perfectly legally go down the street and visit a prostitute. And that is not a serious problem in Germany. That if my wife was complaining, you went to a prostitute. And well, they're charging the prostitutes taxes here. So, you're not going to find a government trying to cut off their own source of income. I mean, men in these societies today are more polygynous than ever. It's just, I'm trying to find the right words here. Just because he doesn't have an actual physical touch and access to her at all times doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's the foundation of my logic, is that, you can go online and you could see 100 girls naked, cams, porn, whatever you want, one-to-ones. You can call a call girl, have her come to the house, leave. You can go to see her. And it's been like that throughout history of man, because prostitution has always been a thing. I don't know if it's the world's oldest profession, but it's definitely been a profession, for quite some time. So I don't know.
What is the official? I hate to say official, because one of the things, and this is like the first thing that's in my book, and I'm already seeing this in the chat here, is like I can say, well, I've heard Muslim women say that polygamy is is the best way to go, right? Because the woman is taken care of in the long term. Yeah. But you also have to understand that hypergamy is two sides. It's alpha seed and beta need. So you've got, the guy might be a great catch with respect to how much money he has and what his status is. And maybe he's a very devoted, Islamic guy, but that doesn't make him the guy that she is necessarily aroused by. And it's not solving that other side of hypergamy. I understand that. But so here's the first thing that happens in my book, and I address this in the introduction of the book, is a lot of people will say, well, that's not real Islam, or that's not real Christianity, or in my religion, which is the true religion, it's the no true Scotsman argument, right? Like, that's the way those guys do it. But in the real religion, it's like this. So I probably should have thrown that out there before we even got started here. I get it. I understand that, there's somebody somewhere is going to go, well, in my very remote sect of Sunni Islam over here that's in outer Mongolia, then we believe the real thing. It's like, okay, I got it, but I have to go with what I've got, a general knowledge. So my next question is, what do Muslim men think of, like, say, pornography? Because when I'm writing stuff from from a red pill perspective, I've always said that if there's a female imperative, a feminine imperative, there's also a masculine imperative. The masculine imperative is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And that is both, I think, a source of men's strength, but also it can be a weakness for us as well.
Absolutely.
So I see pornography as something that is satisfying that masculine imperative, but because it becomes a sedation for us. But like, how do Muslim men approach like pornography, or approach like Western sexualization? because everything right now, I think we're under sexualized, but we're over eroticized right now. So
Wait, what? Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds right. And let me go back just real
sure.
quick, bro, on one thing you said before. When people say that, they're going to say that, polygyny and whatnot is part of it, or it's not the real Islam. In the famous words of Andrew Tate, they're dorks. Because when you look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions, where the sources of Islam come from, these guys were all polygynists, or the vast majority were polygynists. So that could just be immediately eliminated. They're literally, contradicting Islam themselves by saying that. As for pornography, it is an ongoing problem with Muslim men. It's something I get private messages about all the time. How do I stop my porn addiction and whatnot? Pornography in general, there is not in general, in specific, pornography of all sorts is strictly prohibited Islamically.
Mm-hmm.
A man is not supposed to be looking at a woman that is not his own woman. This is on the street, on the roads. There's a famous hadith that says, when you're out on the streets, when you're on the roads, lower your gaze. And this is in regards to looking at women. That a man is not supposed to be out like eyeballing women up and down, staring them. Does she have a big butt? Does she have, how is she pretty? Is she not pretty? This is when she has clothes on in the street. So that a man would go online and start looking at a woman naked. This is absolutely prohibited if he's not married to that woman. I caught some heat for a tweet about that because there's a situation in the Muslim world where you find that there are sisters there. They'll cover their face and then they'll send nudes to guys, and then they'll get married and they'll never send their husband a nude. And I said, send your husband nudes. Like you were sending them before.
Supposed to, yeah.
It's permissible now. Send it to this guy. He's at work and he wants to be happy to come home. He wants to drive home faster than normal. Send him a nude. And they really went in on me.
That's interesting. Let me just stop you there real quick. I've had this discussion before with Christian guys. And there's a very famous quote from Christ is that to look at a woman with lust in your eyes is to be guilty of adultery, to be guilty of sin, right? To have looked at her and I would presume to be aroused by that person. Now, here's my next question is so if it is not allowed, sin, whatever, to look at a woman who is, good looking or whatever, to like when you're on the street, that's not your wife. How do you ever find a wife then? Like, how do you not look at a woman and say, I really want to tap that? How do I, how do I get into that
question.
Without in the first place?
Yeah, this goes into the process of getting married. And getting married, you're allowed to look at the woman. She's there's differences of opinions on this, on what's allowed to be seen. But my understanding is that the woman is allowed to remove her head covering. You're allowed to see her without her hair. Without her hijab on, and you can see her hair, made up and whatnot, so that you can see as to whether or not the woman is attractive. There's actually a hadith that says, go and look at the woman, that you should go and see her before you marry her. So if you intend to marry a specific woman, then you are allowed to go and look at that woman. Is she hot? Is she not hot? Because you have to be attracted to the woman.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's because, and I've always thrown that one. I don't think I've ever had this discussion with Muslims, because like I always said that for you to even want to get into a marriage, like even with the purest of intentions, right, you still have to go, yeah, I could see getting after it with this girl over here because I'm really hot. She's hot. I want that. Let's go. But there has to be some sort of point where you do have some sort of genuine lust for your wife, or the woman who's going to be your wife anyways. So I've always wondered about that. So here's, I didn't directly ask this of Tate, but he kind of offered it up anyways. But like, how do your wives like interact with each other? Are they cool with all of this? Do they do you have to like be the referee? Like, do they fight for your attention? How does like living with, soon to be 3 girls, how does that work out? Because like guys will tell me, I can't even find one wife, let alone like, find 3 wives, but then like living with like 3 wives. And then like guys will, of course, guys on the outside will accuse me of like, oh, well, you just, it's cheaper to keep her. Rolla just has to follow along to, go along and get along. And I'm like, no, I can deal with my wife. I understand female nature. I've lived a red pill life for a very long time now, and it's hard to describe like how I deal. But I'm only dealing with one woman. Well, I mean, I guess you could. I mean, I guess you could consider my daughter. I have to deal with my mother-in-law, my daughter, but like, I'm only dealing with one woman, like intimately. Like, how does that
Yeah.
work with you?
It's generally a black and white type situation. Like
Mhm.
in Qatar, I literally had wives knife fighting. I mean, they literally broke out knives and started fighting. I got cut. I was bleeding. I had to get
Three
stitches.
go in, one comes out.
um, and then I walked into a situation where it's like my current wife and what is now one of my ex-wives, who I used to call Becky, they got along quite well. You know,
Mhm.
they got along very well, and we had a very peaceful situation in the house. There could be situations where it was stressful, you
Mhm.
know, but generally there was a balance. You know, I made sure not to. I believe Andrew said it. It's like, it's like there's limits to how much enjoyment you can have living with multiple women. I think he said, he's talking about lying in bed, and one was like, "Oh, you turned and faced her, and you didn't face me." These are real things. And
Mhm.
anybody who acts like their happy-go-lucky household with multiple women isn't like that, then he's lying.
Mhm.
Right
I think.
now, my current situation, uh, I end up with a knife fight again if I put these two women in the same house. So
Mhm. So you
it's a
have
hit
them.
and miss.
So do you have? So you don't all live together in one house then?
Not right now. Not right
Oh,
now. This
are you trying to work it out so you can?
this one's not going to work out. This is why I'm
Oh,
looking for number three.
oh man.
It's because I have to, I can't. It's very difficult for me to, live
So
alone.
it's not
What
like
I
you're
consider
sleeping with two chicks at the same time. It's like you go over
no,
and
Islamically, you can't do that
I
anyway.
was gonna ask
You
you
know,
that. I mean, maybe that's unseemly, but like, I mean, so you can't like have three ways or whatever. It's just like you be with one, you're with
no.
one, you're with another, you're with the other.
You,
Yeah,
if you did it, you'd
so
be
there's
like
the difference between
Islamically
you and
out of
Tate.
bounds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So there's the
yeah,
difference.
that's Islamically out of bounds. Yeah,
Really? Okay.
yeah,
So, but like, reproducing with other women is okay, but just not
yeah.
at the same time. I got it.
Not
I think that was probably like Old Testament stuff too for Jews as well. It's like,
yeah.
they don't want you to have an orgy, but yeah.
Yeah, because this lowering the gaze, it actually applies women to women, men to men. I mean, we have what's called Islamically, it's called aura, or the private areas. And there's a private area between women where women
Mhm.
are not supposed to see certain parts of another woman's body, or a
Oh.
man's not supposed to be, walking around with his junk out in the locker room. We're not supposed
Mhm.
to be doing that either.
Oh,
So this
really?
applies to
Oh.
women also.
Mhm.
So when you're in the bedroom, you have multiple women, there's already a problem there.
Mhm.
If
Oh,
Islamically,
if
she's
there's
not
two.
supposed to be seeing her co-wife's body.
I see. Do they help each other? Like if will they help each other with like childcare and stuff like that? Like
Yeah.
if you're like, are they co-parent, I guess, multi-parenting? Are they
That's
all
one
coming
thing I
together?
really liked about, Becky. She was really helpful around the house, whatnot with kids, kids and whatnot. She was really good with that. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, there was a lot of other problems that couldn't be undone.
So
But
you have
generally, yeah.
so like one wife is more cooperative, like say, than another wife.
Actually, I have a course and I talk about this. There's always, without question, there's one passive woman and there's one aggressive woman. You
Mhm.
know, and so one is always going to adopt a passive position and stance, and one's going to adopt a more aggressive stance.
Mhm.
And you as a Muslim man, you have to really control that, or it's going to wreck your relationship with your wives.
Are there, and this is something that I didn't know until I talked to Rabbi Kaba, but he said in Orthodox Judaism, a Jewish man is not allowed to touch his wife when she is menstruating, when she is in
Mm.
that time of the month. Is there something like that in Muslim faith?
You're not allowed to have sexual intercourse with a woman on her menses. This is
Yeah.
what you're not allowed to do. But touch her and whatnot, there's nothing about
Oh,
it. You
really?
can
Okay.
kiss
Yeah.
her, fondle. There's hadith about this that you're allowed to kiss her, fondle, or and play around with her and whatnot. But
Hmm.
actual intercourse while she's
Is
on her
not.
menses is not something that's permissible.
I see. I see. Yeah, because I think it was something to do with the blood as well. But like
And
for
there's actually a joke in the Muslim community where they say it's like if you have one wife, when your wife is on her period, so are you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what blowjobs are for, right? Yeah. So yeah, I did not know that because Orthodox Jews will not touch their wives like for that
Oh,
week. And
wow.
and Rabbi Kaba was saying something like he said like that sort of like builds that anticipation for the guy during that week so that when they come back, like he was, because he, of course, he's a big fan of my work. And so when I was writing about I've got in my first book, I've got a chapter in there called Your Friend Menstruation, and it goes into ovulatory shift. And so we start talking about like how during when women go into menesis or when they go in their down cycle, that it's probably a good idea to just, back the hell off and let them do whatever they're going to do, because then when they come back around in the proliferative stage, then that anticipation comes back. And then of course, why is that a good idea? Because it promotes fertility. It promotes, having babies. So that's interesting to me. I was always wondering if the two wives even know about each other, or if y'all live in the same house, like a kibbutz or something.
I mean, not to let out too many secrets on my course, but basically I talk about like separate rooms and whatnot, how it should be set up, what's ideal, what's less than ideal, things that guys need to know that are going to try and do this, and they don't stumble into it like I did when I was in guitar, because I was like, I'm just going to do this, and it was a nightmare, and I learned a lot of lessons from that.
All right, some dude in here was asking, like, what is the Muslim policy about drinking alcohol?
Totally impermissible. Any sort of intoxicant, be it weed, mushrooms, licking frogs, cocaine, alcohol, anything that's considered to fog the mind is absolutely impermissible.
And why is that? What's the rationale behind that? Is it just because it's against God, or is it because there's a practical latent purpose to it?
There might be a practical latent purpose that I don't know, but I just know that it's a prohibition. There was actually a hadith that I read I can't remember what it was exactly, but paraphrasing it, basically there was some alcohol drinking going on. Two of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, got into a fight, and he was hit across the face with a cow jawbone or something. And I think it was the next day that prohibition for alcohol came in, but don't quote me 100% on that. But that's what I remember. That might have been a general thing, but I don't think that was the only specific reason. But
I think it's
just a prohibition. So
I think, coming from a Christian background and like being familiar with the character of Jesus Christ, and then being familiar with the character of Muhammad is interesting to me, because it seems like Muhammad is much more pro-masculine. Like, he got into fights, like you just said, he got whacked with a jawbone, right? Or didn't he lead armies or something like that?
He led armies, yes.
Yeah. So there's
injured.
So there's there's almost a much more conventionally masculine aspect, I think. And it's not to say that, Jesus didn't flip the table of the money changers and all, because that's what everybody throws at me. I know that. Not to say that there aren't aspects, but like, Jesus didn't lead in the armies. So I think that's interesting. And for
another,
go ahead.
If you're just interested, there was another thing that just popped in my head. There was another story. I think it was a prophetic story, where basically there was a man. He was lured by a woman a rich woman into her apartment, and he was given the option to kill a child to escape, drink alcohol, or sleep with her. And he didn't want to do any of it. He was a religious man. And so, since he wasn't allowed to leave, he drank the alcohol, ended up killing the kid and sleeping with the woman. It's just basically was saying that, alcohol is the root of all evil, basically.
Do it all. Yeah, just go ahead. All right.
So, sorry.
Okay, I got to ask you about this. What is it in it? Now, maybe this is like a side thing, but is there any like religious, like doctrinal reason that Muslim men are supposed to grow beards? Or is that just a cultural thing? Like, can you be a Muslim man and not have a beard?
I mean, not having a beard doesn't remove you from the fold of Islam, but it is considered to be obligatory to have a beard. If there's a reasoning behind it, some things in Islam just are like that. There's no real explanation. It's just, this is how it is, do it. And the beard is, as far as I know, one of them. I have never seen a real explanation as to why you have to have it. It's just, this is what a man does. And some of the scholars say that growing the beard is a beautification of the men, and not having it is a beautification of the women. But that's not something that's from the Quran. That's not something from the Hadith. It's just
a social thing. All right. So now, before everybody thinks I'm goofing on you, the reason I ask is because there is, again, in Alpha God, there's some chapters in there about why is it that Orthodox religious men always grow beards? Because it's cross religion. I mean, Orthodox Jewish men, Hasidic Jewish men will grow big old beards, right? Or Eastern Orthodox Christians will grow big old beards. And I mean, even the Amish, man, you gotta have the Mennonite thing going on, right? And so I of course, the the naturalistic, the evolutionary purpose, of course, is to make the man's face look bigger. Like that's why, is to give you that more full look, as opposed to like being all like me right now, just out au natural. But I always find it fascinating because it seems to me that like developing and growing a beard, because it's something that women cannot do, it sort of sets you apart from the feminine. And it's also a sign of testosterone too, like the fact that you can grow a beard at all.
I haven't met a woman that doesn't like it.
Yeah, that's funny, because like I know that there's a lot of Western women who don't like that, or I think that, and maybe they're right about this, is particularly in sort of millennial culture, or like the new males who like they want to dress as if they're like lumberjacks, but they've got like, they wear these big, huge, gigantic beards, but they're the most effeminate guys. And I think that really kind of, I think that, and this is just me talking, I think that sort of comes off as a deceptive tactic for women to present yourself as a guy who has more testosterone than he actually does, who is more masculine, conventionally masculine, because what that does
is beard LARPing.
Yeah, beard LARPing, like you're a lumberjack. And I think that the reason why it pisses off women so much is that it's a deception, because it's presenting that man as being more masculine than he actually is, and trying to bypass those hypergamous filters, like trying to say, I'm actually like this, I'm actually a good guy, but in reality you're wearing Dockers and whatever else, and you're or a man bun. People are getting off on my long hair right. But wearing your hair long, or in some way implying that you are more masculine than you aren't, is sort of like this deceptive tactic, I think. But that's interesting to me, because it's across culture, and it's across, like, to display masculinity is almost universally like, I'm going to grow a big long beard. I keep seeing pictures of Roosh right now, and it's like out to here.
Yeah,
like,
he's got a massive beard.
There comes a point where, like, trim the damn thing. But yes, I was wondering about that. So so on the topic of masculinity, how many sons do you have right now?
I have 6 sons.
You have to think about it.
Yeah.
I want to. You have 6 sons. How old is the oldest one right now?
They're twins, and they are 25 years old.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have some adult kids. Now, did they follow in your footsteps? Like what I'm going to get onto next here is like issues of masculinity from within the masculine culture. Because I know that you do counseling, or I'm not exactly sure what you do. I know you have a program of some sorts, but I would presume it's to help. Is it to help masculine men from a red pill perspective? Is that how it works?
The vast majority of the help that I give men are one-to-ones on saving their relationships or getting their relationships back together. One thing that you find that a lot of Muslim women do is, because the Muslim family is generally intact, and so women have a very strong family network. And so what happens is, when she starts to have problems in the household with the man, or the man starts to have household problems with the woman, she'll go back to her family. And of course, this is, that's the best place for her to go, instead of, to Chad next door or whatever else. But what I've specialized in, what I've gotten really good at, is getting these families back together, and generally it's just the guy doing things that are the antithesis of what's attractive to the woman. And then she starts to congruence test him constantly and consistently, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. And so generally that's what I end up doing, is counseling him on how to deal with this, how to regain masculine frame. And I've had a pretty good success rate. I think there's only one family out of about like 12 or 13 that I haven't been able to get back together. They're together, but not together, if you know what I mean. They have conjugal visits with one another, where they, have sex and whatnot, but they're not living together. But I did get them back to a position where they're considering themselves, married.
And why? So what is their biggest problem? Why did they get in those situations in the first place?
Well, it's the feminine imperative. What you find is guys, when we look at what's happening in terms of like this feminist attempt to enter into Islam, they're trying to make Islam a religion of female rights, as opposed to a religion of worshiping Allah, because that's what the foundation of Islam is the worship of Allah. That's the first thing. And so all other acts after that, including marriage, fall into the worship of Allah. But what we're finding now is, we're finding both men and women who are trying to make this, Islam doesn't oppress women, this, that, the other. And there's such a desire and need to prove themselves to others that we're not bad to women, that they now made the religion about the rights of women. And so you have guys that are emoting and trying to be more feminine, emotional, and more, touchy-feely soft with the women, trying to outdo the next guy, next door. He wants to be more emotional than Muhammad, and Muhammad's trying to be more emotional than Ahmed, and women don't find that stuff attractive.
Yeah, we try to
And just
out-emote
because
each
he's
other.
married, he's looking at his parents' marriage, and his dad is like just, his dad is a straight desert Arab or a guy from the hills of Pakistan. It was probably, shooting goats and whatnot in the head. Just he's being a raw man, and he's looking at his marriage, and he's not looking at the fact that his dad is a significantly more masculine man than he is. And that's why his mom is happy and staying in the marriage. And so these guys they're a mess. They're confused, a lot of them.
So so you have 6 sons. Do you teach them this as well? I mean, how have you imparted your understanding of masculinity with respect to your religion as well? Like, how have you did you have to sit them down and say, you do this, or did you just what was a process there? Would you say that your sons follow along in your footsteps?
My eldest sons follow in the sense that of masculinity, they're both military. One's a special forces soldier. The other one, I think he's trying to get into the SEALs. Another one, he's a ranger. So they're very masculine in that, and trying to I work out regularly. And so this is something they took from me, definitely. My other sons, it's more of just, we talk about this stuff. My 16-year-old goes to the gym with me intermittently, and we just talk about women and everything, how their behaviors are. Because when I'm at the gym, I get a lot of female attention at the gym. And I'm like, what happened there? And he's like, no, tell me. It's I go over him with this stuff, the biology of the behavior, and then how you can take advantage of the social expression of that biological trigger that brought her over to me, So he has pretty good understanding. The other ones are still a little bit, younger, and it's a bit difficult to talk to a 13-year-old about that stuff.
Now, okay, so I presume since you have 8 kids, so you have 2 daughters then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you impart, what's the differences between say raising your sons as Muslim men as opposed to raising 2 daughters? People hit me up with this all the time, man. I know I'm putting you on the spot because people will say, well, how did you raise your daughter? My daughter's going to get her master's degree next year or so. I think I did a pretty good job with my daughter, and people will always hit me up and say, well, what did you do to make her, to get, it's the only thing I did was live it out. Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do is be a role model. But I was asking you, what is your approach to raising daughters?
I mean, my daughter, she has open access to my life. My ex and my kids actually live downstairs from me. They're actual neighbors. And my daughter, I travel a whole lot. And my daughter travels with me and my wives. Back when, I was living with multiple, and she would travel with me and my multiple wives, and we go places together. We go Switzerland or wherever else. So for her, she's actually watching how I how I interact with my wives and whatnot. And so her expectations are quite high of a man. I just basically taught her the same way I did my sons, the realities that you're going to live, and the Islamic boundaries that we have. And she's 19 now. She's asked me to find her a husband, and this is actually turning quite a problem.
That was my next question: is how does that work for? How does prearranged marriages work for you?
They work. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a lot of work. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, because I have a pretty good Muslim network, but it's just been very.
So she's 19 and she's asking you right now. So she's cool with you finding her husband then.
She asked me when she was 17. It's just taking me this long to find somebody,
Yeah, especially in this day.
I'm still looking, Yeah.
So maybe that's a real good question. What kind of guy are you looking for to give your daughter?
Just for a half decent balanced guy, just a half decent balanced guy. A guy who's displaying all except nominal amounts of masculinity, and
I know.
And you're in
a different spot than I am right now, but yeah.
And some sort of economic academic achievement. So he shows he's got brains and bronze. And finding this balance amongst Muslim men, I'm not trying to throw Muslim men under the bus, but it's very difficult. You find guys that'll be very well-to-do but overweight or ultra skinny, and if something happens, I need to call the police. No, dude, you're her superhero. You need to save the day right now. It's going to take the cops 5 minutes to get here. What's going to happen in that time? I'm going to give my daughter to you. Good God, I walk around here. I got this great big machete in the house. I got guns. Dude, be similar. And you find that guys are either too scared to be that guy, unapologetically, open to violence when it's necessary, or you find a guy that's too far in that field, and then he lacks the academic, achievement or ability to actually financially provide properly for, what's going to be tougher times in the near future.
See, I can understand. Like, I'm not saying I would do it, but I do understand the logic behind a prearranged marriage. Like, if my daughter was to come to me and say, Daddy, please find me a man, because I want to get married. I want, like, my daughter says she can't wait to be a mother. She can't wait to be a wife and a mother. And I think that's to have a young lady at 21 years old tell me that just out of the blue it goes against pretty much everything that the society is really, but Western culture anyway is teaching.
I mean, this is one of the beauties of the congruence between Islam and red pill. I think in general, I mean, maybe your situation is different, but I love my daughter, and I think very highly of her.
I want the best for my daughter.
Exactly. At the end of the day, she's a woman, and she's going to be goofy, and that's my humble opinion. And so, the PUAs, the pickup artists, this, that, the other, she's, despite understanding all of this stuff, because we've talked about this, she's still subject to it. Just in the same way that we understand the tricks and the tricks and the traps that women use to trap men, we're still subject to it from a biological level. And because women, in my humble opinion, are slightly more goofy than men, I don't think that, I won't say I don't trust her to pick her own husband, but I think I would do a better job. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And
See,
Islamically, that's our job as a man.
Yeah. And I get that too. Cause like I've never been in this position before. Cause I am 51 years old right now and my daughter's 21. So, you and I are both about this. I mean, you probably had your daughter around the same time that I had my daughter when I was 30. So, but like, I'm now understanding like why a prearranged marriage, like it makes sense. I'm not saying that like, I'm going to go do that, but I understand why the tradition exists, because I don't want a douchebag guy to be my the father of my grandchildren. I want what is absolute. Yeah, I know. I want that's. Yeah. So like when people tell me, when they say, oh, it's so barbaric to have prearranged marriages, I'm like, well, that used to be the way things were, prior to courtly love and the idea of romantic love. We've standardized on, because we live in a gynocentric society, of course, but like even prior to all of this, we've standardized on a metric of love that is based on romantic love, as opposed to like what's best for the family, what's best for the family unit, even you can say what's best for the religion bill, what's best for the tribe, what's best for our circle and our people, what's best for them. Well, an adult male is probably going to be a better judge of character of another adult male than a 19-year-old girl, a 21-year-old girl. And I think what it seems barbaric right now to say, hey, I'm going to pick out a husband for you. But I wouldn't be doing it because I'm like, I can't wait to get rid of her. I'll make a lot of money, or I'll sell my daughter as if she's like some, piece of cattle or something. It's like, no, I know that you're going to have children, and I don't want those children to be little rats. I want them to be good up. I would love to see my legacy. I only want the best for my daughter or my son or whoever else. I only want that. So I understand it. But I also understand why women like lose their minds over that. Like, oh, you're going to tell me that I can't pick the guy out that I want to have. And the reason
there's a lot of resistance right now.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the reason for that is because it puts the control of hypergamy in a man's hands. and a father's hands in this case. And you can make the best case for it and say, look, I understand what hypergamy is about. I understand the kind of guy that you want to get with. I'm not going to say, like you were just saying before, like, I don't want some fat guy. I want a guy who's going to be able to kick ass when he needs to and provide for my daughter. And it's like, I love my daughter like I love myself. So why would I not want to do something like, and I think it blows their minds, you know?
Yeah, he's the handover. He's the carryover. He's the carrier of my torch. Islamically, we have a system that's called like wali or wakil, like the male guardian. And my daughter is under my guardianship until I hand it over to the next man, which will be her husband. And it's like, dude, you know, I'm handing you the torch here. You know, when I'm old and frail, and it'll probably happen one day, you're the man. Not only have I handed my daughter to you, I've handed the entire like family legacy in terms of a patriarch over to you. You know, I'm just gonna give this to the regular guy around here with the skinny arms and like, you know, half a brain. Dude, get lost. But you find that there's a lot of resistance to the pre-arranged marriage system in Islam nowadays also. And this is something that comes from that feminine/feminist imperative that's like trying to invade Islam. And what you find is a lot of these sisters, they don't trust their fathers or their brothers or their uncles to find them a mate that they will too at the same time find attractive. And when you meet a lot of these guardians, like I don't have access to an Islamic community in the same way that these women do, because a lot of these women will be from Pakistan, Arab countries or whatnot, or African countries. And they can just say, I want to get married. The men can do this too. I want to get married. And their mom will find a woman. Their dad will find a man. I don't have access to this. So when I meet these women and I meet these walis afterwards, because I have to go meet them and say, hey, look, I want to marry your daughter. You know, I can see why they don't trust them. I can see why they brought me there, because you're looking at this guy and I'm listening to him talk and I'm just like, dude, do you have any clue about the woman that's sitting in your living room that you call your daughter? It's obvious you don't. And you find a lot of Muslim men are in this fairy tale world about what women are and what women aren't. The one thing that a lot of Muslim men do, and that's led to a lot of problems that we're seeing right now, is that they've made the apotheosis of women. They have made them into literal angels that do not have any sort of sexual desires, wants, or imperative or agency. And it's completely untrue. And so it's upon me as her guardian to help her in her imperatives and fulfilling them and satisfying them. This is a very important point, you know, of masculinity also, is recognizing it, you know.
So and that's kind of where I wanted to go with this, is from an Islamic perspective, where do you see masculinity at, like in the larger society right now? Obviously, clearly you're in a Western society, you're in Germany, so I guess that would be considered the West. Like, what do you see from an Islamic perspective? Like, where is masculinity going right now? I mean, do you see that, like, because I can like, I've done these interviews with other guys from different religions, and I think across the board there's always been this idea that we need to get back to some sort of conventional masculinity. Do you see that as something that's a problem within Muslim society? Is encouraging? Because you were just saying right now, which kind of surprises me, because I think a lot of guys will say the common, you know, perception is that Islam is going to save the West, and not necessarily because of the religion, but because they know how to treat women, or they know that, or they put like patriarchy as a prominent fixture, I guess, within the religion. And it's not so much the religion as it is, this is what works best for us socially or intersexually, I guess.
I think from a religious standpoint, Islam can save the West, and it's probably going to help. If there's any sort of rectification that takes place, Islam will play a part in it. And I'll give you multiple reasons why. Firstly, just from the structure of the religion and the way that, you know, Allah's revealed the religion, it puts masculinity at a forefront. It puts men in charge of everything. It's just unavoidable. It's inescapable. Anybody, feminists, you know, to the blue pill beta guys, they have to jump through flaming hoops and gasoline underwear to try and explain away the patriarchal nature of Islam. They have to put in work, and it doesn't work. It never does. So even soft guys just have a fallback to where it's like, okay, he can't enforce his will, so he can use Islam as a buffer to enforce his will. Well,
Mhm.
it's not my rule, baby. This is just the rules of Islam.
God
You
said,
know,
yeah, God told me
yeah,
to do
God
this. Yeah.
said.
Mhm.
And generally, you find Muslim women, they are quite, responsive to religious texts. So if a man is knowledgeable in religious texts, he can protect himself, you know, from being overrun if
Mhm.
he's not already blue pill. A second thing is looking and observing Germany in general. Now, I left Germany almost a decade ago, and I've just gotten back. This trip I've been here about like 4 years, and the
Mhm.
demographic shift has been significant.
Mhm.
They didn't only let in Syrian refugees; they let in Africans, they let in everybody. And one thing you see is that these young, very young, hot, beautiful German girls are chasing, they are pursuing these Syrian refugee boys
Mhm.
like there's a sale
Mhm.
on Liboutini shoes or something. I
Mhm.
mean, they are really after these guys, and these guys are 100% masculine. They're coming
Mhm.
from a society and a culture that was already rough and tumble. Then they
Mhm.
left a war, and now they've come here, and they're looking at society, and it's just, to them, it's soft, and
Right.
the women find that attractive. And so now you find, when I walk through the shopping malls and whatnot, you find these girls who would normally be like very bitchy and with a terrible attitude, acting very soft, very feminine with these Arab guys, and it's just like, okay, what's going on here? So just by default of these guys coming in and being Muslims, even though they're not really practicing ones, they're changing the environment. They're
Mhm.
changing the atmosphere, the social atmosphere in Germany between men
Mhm.
and women. And this is also part of like the whole rape thing that they talk about, because Arab guys, from let me not say Arab guys, I don't want to throw them under the bus, it's not my intention when I say Arab guys, but this is the vast majority of them are in these rape cases that we find going on in Germany. And
Mhm.
what happens is they're coming from a culture of, why is this woman out here with me at 4 a.m. if she's not trying to get laid,
Mhm.
you know and so they've just applied that mentality here. You're out here for a reason. You're in this
Mhm.
hotel room with me for a reason. You're out here drinking in the backseat of my car at 3 a.m. for a reason. And
Mhm.
so, they're very, very like assertive, very masculine type of guys. And even though they're not the most practicing, they're changing the environment, in general. And you find guys, this goes back to your earlier question, is there a chasm or a schism between like ethnicity, red pill, whatnot?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think a lot of guys are seeing these guys scoring these girls, and some of these guys are raping these girls. And of course, this is not permissible in Islam. And they're
Mhm.
just like, oh, it's those foreign guys, blah blah blah. And this is where a lot of the racial tension, religious tension comes in, also. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to it's funny. I wrote a post on this back in 2016, and it was called The War Brides of Europe, and it was in response to sort of, I had so many people, and you probably have had this too, as I had so many guys who were asking me about, what do you think about this influx of immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and being Muslim, being in those societies. And I said, well, this is if you go by what I've written about according to War Brides, it all makes sense. And just what you're describing right there is, women want to get with these guys because they are the conquering army. They're the guy. I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't even have to do anything, but they're coming, like you said, rough and tumble. They're coming from these war-torn areas, and these are guys who know how to fight. These are guys who know how to be a man, and they unapologetically know how to be a man. And so they're not there being feminized by a feminist government that invited them there in the first place.
Yep.
And then so I was actually writing this in response to something that was going on in the Netherlands at the time. And I think that there was like a rise in, Sweden is the easiest country to look at right now, but it's like 1,000% rise in rape cases over the last, well, I wrote it in 2016. So certainly over the last like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, and so people were asking me, why do you think that is? And I said, well, it's because women are looking for that conventionally masculine, unapologetic guy. And so what are the soft Dutch do, or what do the soft, Swedes do, is they go and they put on high heels and they go and have this march in solidarity with the women to say, oh, rape is bad, teach men not to rape. And they don't know anything different because they've been, I keep telling guys this, over the last 3 or 4 generations, they have been acculturated to be beta males, to be more blue pill, to be more feminine accommodating. And that's the only way that they know how to you know, to show some kind of solidarity with women. It actually becomes sort of a beta game for them to do that. And so they're willing to humiliate themselves by, like, you know, sort of dressing up in drag and marching and saying, oh, we're with you girls. We're going to change the laws. Well, the laws don't work unless you've got men to enforce those laws.
Absolutely.
And they simply don't, you know, they're not grasping that. But I really think that from the perspective of war brides, which is women are going to, it's like Stockholm syndrome, right? Women are going to find things to fall in love with over their conquering aggressors.
Yeah.
Unless they were like really involved with a really super alpha male, they will have a propensity to latch on to the conquering army, to the guy who ended up, you know, going in and killing it. And here's another thing: is go refer back to Alpha God again. This is also scriptural, and I believe in the Quran as well. Is there are parts of the Old Testament where the God of Abraham would say, "Go into this village or go into this country here and kill off all of the men." Kill all the men, kill all the boys, kill all the women who have known a man, but save the girls for yourself. Save those virgin girls for yourself, so that you can, of course, breed with them, and then, you know, increase the tribe and increase the, you know, the religion and everything else that goes on. And that ends up becoming that the latent purpose of that, of course, is to expand the tribe and expand that particular faction of whatever it is. I think that's probably in the Quran as well, but there are instances where war brides is actually a religious or an aspect of that religion.
Yeah, women are considered to be one of the spoils of war Islamically. If there's an actual jihad, which we haven't seen in our time, then captured women are considered to be a spoil of the war. And this is part of the problem with Islamic State. I mean, we didn't believe, as Salafis, we didn't believe that the Islamic State was waging an actual Islamic war. But had they been, them capturing, I guess it was the Yazidi women, that would have been a legitimate Islamic thing, you know, war brides in this sense, you know. They call them right-hand possession. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a legitimate thing. It might seem uncomfortable, but it's a reality. You know that, you know, women are you know, you can get gold and whatever else and property, land, and animals from it. Women are also something that can come from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand, like, when women say, well, you know, you just treat us like animals, you treat us like chattel, you treat us like whatever, you know, you're spoils of war and those things. Like, we're human beings, we have feelings too, and I get that. I understand where you know, that shit. I wouldn't want to, you know, I wouldn't want that either. But unfortunately, that's how we are. That's what our species is, you know.
There's rules to it, though. I mean, even Islamically, when you capture these women, there are rules. You know, you're not allowed to beat them. You know, you're supposed to dress them, feed them, clothe them in the same way that you would, you know, dress, feed, and clothe your family. You know, I mean, they're not like, it's not slavery in the sense that we understand slavery in the West, you know, which was quite brutal. Even though there was some brutal practices, you know, in the past that were carried out by, like, you know, Arab Muslims. Generally, that fell outside the realm of what's considered to be Islamically correct. So these women aren't actually, you know, come here, you know, you know, you treat her like, you know, like a piece of meat.
Right.
But at the same time, by being on the losing team, for lack of a better term, she does abdicate any sort of physical right to resistance when it comes down to whatever man has captured her. But
Now,
she is to be treated well.
See, and a lot of that, I think, is counter to what a lot of guys in the chat are saying, is like, well, you know, don't Muslim men beat their wives? Like, aren't they allowed to beat their wives to a certain degree? And I've even seen these videos too. I've seen the imam saying, you know, it's okay to beat her, but like not too much, but it's okay to beat her a little bit.
Well, okay. As a Salafi Muslim, my understanding is that there's a hadith that says you can beat the woman with a miswak. Now, a miswak is like a small wooden root that they use to brush their teeth, because they didn't have toothbrushes back then, and it's symbolic, saying that basically I'm showing you that I have the ability to overpower you physically. And we understand that when a man is frustrated and he doesn't know how to deal with a woman in her congruence test, he turns to what he does know, which is physical strength. Well, I'm going to overpower you in the same way I would a man. And Islamically, this beating her with the miswak stick, which is nearly impossible to do, you can't hurt anybody with it. If I had one, I'd show it to you. You can't hurt a person with it. It's to show her that, you know, if I wanted to, I could beat you. You know, I could physically overpower you, but I'm showing you mercy here. But there's a chain of what do you call it? like an order of events that you're supposed to, follow for disobedient women and how to deal with them. But beating, hitting in the face, this is generally, there's a rule against this for men or women. There's no striking to the face, beating and whatnot. These guys would have to show me some sort of text that say that this is permissible. I don't know that it is, and I'm pretty well read on Islam, even though I don't speak openly about it, because I don't consider myself a religious leader of any sort,
right,
or a caller to religion. I haven't seen anything that explicitly says, I can go around, shut up, bitch, just smack her across the face or anything. I've never seen any of this. So
yeah, I know.
Guys would have to present their proof.
So, and then I also think that like understanding, like, how do you get to that point? I mean, there's guys who are going to be abusive, right? I think one of the things that, study when I'm writing the chapter here on Islam, and thank you for helping me out with a lot of this stuff. I'm taking notes as I'm doing this. One thing that I see that, and the Jews did this as well, but one thing I see that, that Islamic men do is they seem to be very possessive. They seem to be like, I don't want my wife to, I want her to dress in a burqa. I don't want, you're not going on any girls' night out. If you're going to be my wife, you're not going to do these things. So there's a very much a possessiveness to this. And it's almost as if it's, and I've talked about possessiveness. I talk about mate guarding all the time. It almost seems like mate guarding is like an article of faith for Muslim men. It's like they're supposed to do those things.
Yeah, it's a part of the religion. Actually, it's part. Man is supposed to have. It's Islamically, in Arabic, the word is called ghira. What it means is protective jealousy. And there's a hadith that says a man who has no protective jealousy over his woman will not smell the fragrance of paradise, even if you were to stand a distance of 70 years walk away from paradise, you wouldn't be able to smell it. So this man who has no protective jealousy over his woman, he's a person who's not going to enter into paradise. So it is part of the religion, and it's one of the 12 rights of the women. Women have 12 rights, men have 9, and one of her rights is that the man has jealousy over her. So this is a part of the religion in general, that a man is supposed to have a protective jealousy over his women.
That's
and
interesting.
that protective jealousy.
I was just exploring the concept of jealousy when I was writing about the new idea of poly, right? Like, oh, poly's going to be a great thing, right? We shouldn't be monogamous, and suddenly now we want to be poly in a feminine primary social order. But my greatest concern over that, and I sort of locked horns with Dr. Jeff Miller about this, is that there's always going to be jealousy, and I think jealousy is something that's innate. It's something that men are always going to have, because we have to be our prime directive, our existential fear is to raise the child of another man, to be fooled to the same degree that women don't want to be fooled that they are reproducing with a beta male when they thought, and the guy presented himself as an alpha male. To that same degree, men have that same degree of jealousy, in that you told me that if I invest in this child, the child is going to be mine. And that is a biological evolutionary imperative that is so strong, we will write it into a religion. We will write it into, or we will make that something that is like unconscionable. So like and you probably saw it. I tweeted this out. There was a guy who was doing, I think, a podcast or something, and talking about how proud of himself that he was, and how secure he was in his masculinity.
What the hell?
For allowing his wife, encouraging her to go out and nail other guys. Like, I'm fat, I know she's coming home to me. Well, that doesn't make that. What does that make you? That makes you a cuck, is what that makes.
That makes you a sucker. Yeah.
So I can say that, and you can get, and of course, what happens is you get this back and forth about, oh, you're a caveman, or you're a chauvinist, or women have urges too, and blah blah blah, and you can go through this, but you still can't deny that there is an element of jealousy that is involved in all of this. And the reason for that jealousy is because over 100,000 years, we evolved to have that jealousy instinct. Now you can say, well, we're created by a divine creator. Okay. Doesn't matter. We're still jealous. Okay. However we got to that jealousy.
The creator knows his creation best.
But
he put jealousy in us.
And there's a reason why we have that, because men need that, because pragmatically, whether you're religious or not, pragmatically, men need to know that the child is theirs. Otherwise, it is a waste of a life. It is a waste of their energy and their efforts and their resources to put it into that to that child that's not theirs, unwillingly, unbeknownst to them. Like, guys will always throw this at me and they'll say, well, what if you adopt? Well, if you adopt, at least you had the choice. At least you knew what you were getting into, as opposed to having to have that deception. That the same existential fear that men have is exactly the same degree of existential fear that women have, that they will be with a guy who is unworthy and they will reproduce with a beta male instead of an alpha male. I got a few questions here. Let's see. What's this other one? Antonio says, is it permitted in Islam to marry first cousins? I know Afghans and Pakistani that are married to their cousins.
Yes, it is. As far as I know, there's no prohibition to it. There's no encouragement for it either. It's just the permissibility. There's some things you're just allowed to do. I don't think it's encouraged. I don't know that it's encouraged, but I do know it is permissible.
Okay. So and why? What's the deal with that? What's the permissibility about that? I mean, is it just to keep the family together? Well, like, I can understand. Okay, like just what you were talking about, like with prearranged marriages. Well, what if you can't find a dude? What if you can't find a guy who's worth a shit? You know, how are you gonna?
I can only answer from a logical standpoint, but I can't say that is the religious reasoning. And from the logical standpoint is when we look at, like, how a lot of Arab tribes were structured and designed. They were like nomadic people. The chances of coming across another tribe to where you would have like women within, that are available to marry between these two tribes would probably be quite difficult in that time, and so you'd have a larger family to where you'd have access to marry from. This is just an assumption. I don't know. I just know it's a permissibility, but it might have something to do with that because Arabs were generally nomadic. And so it was probably difficult for them to find mates, out in the desert. If anybody's been in the desert in Saudi,
there's a lot of traditional stuff, like, I mean, particularly in the Old Testament, that made sense back in those days. Like, don't eat shellfish, because it'll kill you. Don't eat pork because it could have trichinosis in it or something. Those kinds of things. I understand that. And those end up becoming, of course, I guess, halal or whatever. Are you allowed to eat pork or shellfish?
No.
That's
pork, no. Shellfish, yes.
Oh, okay.
Shellfish, yes. Pork, not. No.
All right. Here's another question. Go ahead.
You find actually this is still a common thing amongst the Muslims, Pakistanis and Arabs in specific. They still marry first cousins. They still marry cousins quite regularly. In Qatar, it was actually a big problem where they had to actually do blood tests before getting married because they had such genetic problems from inconspicuous marriages that they started actually limiting it. Yeah.
Ibo here says, Rolo, wouldn't it be best for mixed religion marriages for the wife to take the religion of the man? How about atheism for both? When such a man converts to Islam, can the marriage last longer? So you actually experienced that too, because didn't you say that your first wife converted to Islam with you?
Yes. And generally, you find that this is the case, that women tend to follow the men into Islam. I find this is quite common, actually.
I'm wondering
if probably the reasoning behind there being an impermissibility for Muslim women to marry non-Muslim men, because if a man is actually, on his mission, and very popular masculine guy, she's going to follow him.
Yeah, Donovan Sharp and I have talked about this, is that when a woman is into a guy, she will start assuming certain aspects of his character and things that he likes. If he likes a certain football team, or he eats a certain food, or he listens to a kind of music or something like that, or in some cases will convert to the religion of that guy if that man's, gravitas or whatever, if that guy is a high enough value, she perceives him as being high enough value, she will change religion to be that way.
There's actually a talk out by a guy, and it's called Salafi by Association, and he talks about this. He's like, if your husband's a Salafi, you're a Salafi, and if he becomes a Sufi, you'll become a Sufi, and if he becomes a Shia, you'll become a Shia. He was talking to the women. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that might be more of a naturalistic thing rather than a religious thing, because I think women are going to follow along with whatever they see a high value guy is. One more reason why, men, like I've had these debates before about whether or not women have agency, or are they responsible for their own their own choices and stuff like guys will always tell me, they'll say, well, the reason women are the way they are is because guys don't hold them to a standard, or guys, because men allow it, right? It's always on the man's fault. If she makes a bad choice, it's always on the guy's fault. And I agree with that to an extent. I do think that women do have agency and they can make their own choices. And if we're going to live in a society or a social order where we are going to respect women's choices, then they also do need to be held to a universal standard, as opposed to like different standards of justice and different standards of forgiving these particular the consequences of those choices.
I mean, Islam recognizes the agency of women, but at the same time, the authority of men. When we look at like how women follow men, this just absolutely confirms the superiority of men. And I'm not trying to be a dick when I say this, but generally you find that women will follow men, and they'll follow them into the worst situations if he's that guy. But at the same time, female agency is recognized in Islam, because if she takes certain actions, if she does certain deeds, she still faces the same punishment that a man would. So it recognizes her agency, that you do have a choice in your actions, because you will face the same consequences as a man does. Just saying I was following my man is not an excuse. So
yeah, and then I think the other part of that, and the other part, by the way, if anybody has more questions, I'll be happy to we'll field them right here. We're getting down to the last like 10 minutes here, but with respect to agency, yeah, I can see that. I think that when right now in Western society, we tend not to hold women to a standard of justice, but when that woman gets into Islam, I think that there is maybe this a more serious understanding of the consequences of having of those actions. Because when you marry a man in Islam, you're not allowed to, only the man can divorce you. Right. I mean, that's how that works. And if that is the conviction that you bring upon yourself, that's a pretty serious, like this guy better damn well be the best thing I got going for me, rather than like, oh, the baby's yours, you can't, I don't know if that happens, but what was, so I think at the beginning of this, you were talking about how Islam is considering single mothers. Is that like is that like right now I've seen a couple of videos, and it impressed upon me this, because most mainstream Christians right now, particularly in evangelical circles, actually even outside that, will present the idea that it is men's Christian duties to man up and marry those sluts, right? To get with the woman, like it's your duty as a Christian man to assume the paternity of a guy and a choice that was made by a woman that you had nothing to do with when she was most likely in her party years, and now she's decided that she's converting to Christianity, or she's rediscovering her faith, and now it's up to you to forgive her. That's one of the things I think why Christianity is primarily based on forgiveness. And I think that that's why women are very much attracted to it. I also, by the way, think that, and this is one other thing that I've been studying, is the attraction of Western women to Krishna right now. Krishnaism is starting to become
totally in the dark about Krishna.
Yeah, I was too for a while, until somebody made me aware of that. And Krishna is almost, it's like Christianity for women without the guilt, without the worry about sexual
being judged.
Being judged. Yeah. It's all the good things of Christianity and none of the judgment.
We're very judgmental in Islam.
I think that might be that might be one of the things that sort of turns women. But here's the thing, and maybe this is something I should have asked you before, is that it seems to me that women, and particularly social justice, has a greater respect for Islam than it does for Christianity or any other religion for that matter.
That's interesting.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think they're?
I can't really make sense of it, man. I don't know.
Like Western women will go and put a hijab on as a sign of respect, or they want to, we're gonna have a interfaith service or something, and they'll wear a hijab. It's like, what is that?
Liberal Muslims and the left, they're the weirdest combination. For the life of me, I can't figure it out, Rolo. I've been trying. I do you that's a question that has me stumped. Also,
Do you
I
think
can't make sense of it.
now here's what I might what I think it is it is a possibly it is a manifestation of recognizing that the men, or at least the impression of the men in Islam, are more masculine, are more dedicated to like patriarchy.
Hmm.
And for as much as women want to grate against the idea of patriarchy, they can't deny that that patriarchy has served Western culture for a very long time. And it almost seems like since the sexual revolution, we have feminized men and masculinized women. But you can't, we're kind of trying to overwrite our innate firmware. So men want to be, one of the reasons why, one of the reasons why the red pill even exists is because men see that there's something wrong. They're saying, why is this, Rolla,
Yes.
explain to me why it is women are like this, or explain to me, like, I'm explaining stuff that my grandfather wouldn't have had to explain to me.
Yeah.
Because he would have just, he would have known that. But I have to explain that because we have like 3 or 4 generations of men who they know that's like their innate firmware, they're in the back of their head, they know that they should be more masculine, that they shouldn't be ashamed of it. They're confused by it. I think we've had this effort to confuse and make masculinity something that's ambiguous or subjective to that individual. Well, that subjectivity is nowhere to be found in Islam, or the impression is that it's nowhere to be found. Now, you're telling me that you're dealing with like blue pill Islamic guys, and I would 100% agree with that. But I think that there is this Western impression, particularly among Western women, that Muslim men are more masculine or more conventionally masculine than are Western men or Christian men or Jewish men or whatever. Like there's this desire to get away from effeminate men. And it seems like the last holdouts on planet Earth are Muslim men. And even if that's not true, that's the impression that they have of those guys.
Well, this goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, it's just built into the religion. So even the nominally masculine guy who wants things a certain way but can't exert it or express it properly, be it through game or whatever else, he always has the fallback of the religion. So even I like my term nominal, a nominally masculine Muslim guy can actually be more masculine just because of default of the religion. He can fall back on a religion like, well, the text says this. Well, Islam says this. The Quran says this. The Hadith says this. And that's his buffer to her hypergamous nature overrunning him in the household. Whatever it may be that he wants, he can express it through the book and through the Quran and the Hadith. So even if it's not really inculcated to him as an individual, as a man, which is superior, which is better, which is something I try and teach these guys, he always has the fallback of Islamic text. And as long as his wife is a woman who practices the religion or tries to, she's going to fall in line with him and and what he wants to try and establish in terms of masculinity in the household.
Yeah, this is
even if it's not part of him.
This is a good comment. This is Rolla. Women have no agency. I halfway agree with that. They will gravitate to masculinity automatically and reflexively. Western men are the most cucked, most feminine, most obese, most drugged up. Yes, 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 and yes. Hence the worship of Islam. So there is like this need, like there is, I think what that's getting at, and I've actually said this in the book, is there's an innate need amongst women to get to a man who is in control, to have, to reproduce with a man who is above and beyond their own perceived sexual market value. And that's really, that's the existential fear of women, is to get with a guy who is that alpha male. Well, if a woman is, and you hear this, I hear my daughter tell me this, is like, there's no good guys, even at 21 years old. And you're saying just a little while ago, it's hard to find a husband for my 19-year-old daughter because they're all chumps, because they're all betas, because they're the product of, and this is even in Islamic society, they're a product of feminization. They're a product of the sexual revolution that feminized men and masculinized women. And now it's time to pay the piper. Now it's time to pay the due. Like, we got to find somebody. I have to find a husband for my daughter. Like, where am I going to find? I can't find one anywhere. And so, but they're why? Okay, but why is that? Because they have this innate drive in the back of their heads, for as much as they're taught in their women's studies classes, for as much as they're taught by a feminine primary society, that we should all be equal and we should all be, blank slate egalitarians. There's still that desire to get with a powerful man, to be part of that powerful man's mission, and to be part of that powerful man's tribe, his family, his tribe, whatever you want to call it, his religion also, because that's a tribe, is to be a part of that. So yeah, it makes complete 100% sense to me that a powerful alpha Muslim man is going to be seen as a better lifetime choice, even if it means she's got to submit. She's got to submit to that guy. And then the other thing, before we finish here, the other thing you were saying here is that a lot of these guys use the religion, like the more beta guys, use the religion as sort of their cover, right? To say, well, the religion here, it says here in the Bible, it says here in the Quran, it says here wherever, that you're supposed to submit to me. And of course, what happens is then they want to go back and rewrite that. Remember, I was telling you about how the faith changes because the doctrine changes. So they got to find some way to go in and rewrite that whole, or reinterpret it in such a way that it doesn't mean what they think it, or it aligns with what they would like it to be. I see a lot of that in Christian culture as well. So like guys will tell me, well, if you're a real true Orthodox Christian, you're not allowed to divorce unless, because this is what Jesus said, you're not allowed to divorce unless she is sexual infidelity. And that sexual infidelity is also on the part of the woman, not necessarily on the part of the man. Of course, we want to switch that around now. But sexual infidelity is the only reason that you can get a divorce from, Christian kosher thing. That was supposed to be something that was, hey, look, here in the Bible, it says, or here in the Quran, it says that you have to submit to me. You have to love me. You have, no matter what I do. Or another good one is in the 10 Commandments, honor thy father and thy mother. A lot of people will chomp at the bit on that, particularly with the father. Honor the father. You'll honor the mother all day long, but we won't honor the father because he is not deserving of respect. And he's only not deserving of respect because the society says he's not. But if you're going to be strictly, I don't know if there's a 10 Commandment kind of thing in Islam, but maybe I should ask you that. Is there something that is there a default respect for your elders in?
Yes.
I'm writing an essay on respect right now. One of the things I kind of had to cover as well is that it seems to me that there's been a loss of respect, not just on intersexual dynamics, but there's a lack of understanding of what respect is for our teachers and for our elders. And for, like, when you go and you do martial arts and you go in there and you bow to your sensei and everything like that, those symbolic respect, we're more apt to bow to our sensei at the karate studio, at the dojo, right, than we are to give a default respect to our elders or whoever else. Is there something like that in Islam?
No, absolutely. Respect to the parents is like a very, very big deal. It's to the point that you are not permitted. Okay, let me just, from a hadith perspective, it says there's a hadith said that basically saying that there was a threat of some punishment. I can't remember what it was, of a man who curses his own parents, and his companions, the Prophet Muhammad's companions, peace be upon him, asked, what man curses his parents? And he says it's a man who curses another man's parents, and so in turn that man curses his parents because he was the initiator of it. Absolute respect for elders is there, for the mothers, for the fathers, but again, same as with Christianity. They like to only express that respect to the mothers because there are specific hadith that talk about the position of the mother and respect for the mother. But it has not negated the respect for the father either. But respect for the parents is absolute in Islam. As long as it's not something impermissible, something that Allah and his messenger have forbidden, you are absolutely to obey your parents. This is why if your parents say you do not marry this person, you don't marry that person. If your parents tell you to do whatever, you do it. If it's not something that contradicts Islam, your parents' authority and respect for them is absolute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, this has been really great, man. We're at 2 hours. Gosh, 2 hours just flew by right
yeah,
now.
it like really did.
You know, I want to have you back on because I'm going to probably be doing
That
like
would be
this was
awesome.
just sort of a get to know you kind of thing. I'm probably going to have Rabbi Kaba back on again. I definitely want to have you back on again, particularly
Love
after
to
I
be
get
back.
done with book 4. Also, I would love to have you on Rule 0 or have you come in like just be a guest on Rule 0 with us
I'd
sometime. We're
love
just
to.
fielding calls and stuff like that. I think that'd be really
By all
fun.
means.
All right. So before I let you go, though, go ahead and give your plug. Tell me about your program and everything else that you do.
Okay, well, you guys can find me on Abuamerican.com. I don't know how long I'm going to last on Twitter. I tend to keep it common, and cordial and whatnot, but I think it's a matter of time before I get banned.
Yeah.
So you can catch me on Abuamerican.com. You can find my course on Gumroad. It's generally not a game guide, guys. It's more for a guy who has multiple women or he has something and he wants to get them in the household. And it tells you how to do it without like running into a bunch of trouble. Other than that, you can catch me on Twitter at Abuamerican.
Excellent. Yes, and I highly advise you to follow him on Twitter. Yeah, you have a really interesting Twitter feed. It's not only is it entertaining, it's educational. So, anyway, so guys, I will be back. I actually did Pat Campbell's show this morning. So, if you're missing out on Friday, it's because we have the holiday going on here. I will be on Rule 0 on Saturday morning. That will be at 11:30 Eastern time. And then, of course, on Sunday, I'll be doing the Rational Male 101. That's at 4:30 Eastern time. So if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. And again, this was the reinstitution, I guess, of Religion in the Red Pill. So I'm going to try to do this a little bit more regularly throughout 2020. And again, thanks for joining me, Craig. I very much appreciate it. And we'll do it again sometime, man.
Glad to be here.
All right. We'll see you.